Chapter 4. The chapter about flowers. Reflection must be directed to what is important. 500 monks went on walkabout, and when they returned, they talked about the various kinds of earth they saw. The Buddha told them to reflect on the earthiness in their own hearts and spoke the following verses. 44. Who will know this earth and the lower realm, together with the gods? Who will try to reflect on the well-taught verse of Dhamma, as a good man reflects on a flower? 45. The trainee knows this earth and the lower realm, together with the gods. The trainee will reflect on the well-taught verse of Dhamma, as a good man reflects on a flower. Go beyond death by reflecting on the body. A monk who had been practicing meditation saw a mirage and realized this was similar to existence. He next saw froth on a river, with its bubbles bursting, and he realized existence is the same. The Buddha summed up his insight with this verse. 46. Knowing that this body is just like froth, understanding it is like a mirage. Cutting off Mara's flower-tipped arrows, one should go beyond the king of death's sight. Death carries off one attached to sense pleasures. Prince Viduddhappa learned that he was the son of a Sakayan slave woman due to a trick the Sakayans had played on his father, King Pasenadi, and he vowed revenge. On becoming king, he massacred the Sakayans, but on his way home, he and his army were swept away by flood waters. Later, the Buddha spoke this verse summarizing what had happened. 47. Death takes up and carries away the one whose mind is attached to collecting flowers, like a flood carries off a sleeping village. Death carries off one attached to sense pleasures. Bhatibhujika passed away from heaven and was reborn on earth, had 4 sons, served the monastics faithfully, and at the end of her life was reunited with her husband, Malapari, in Dawatdingsa heaven. The monastics told the Buddha about the loss of their benefactor, and he gave this teaching. 48. The end maker takes control of the one whose mind is attached to collecting flowers, even though he is unsated with pleasures. The sage should take only what he needs and depart. Venerable Moggallana brought the miser Kosiya and his wife to the Buddha, who preached to them on generosity, and they both attained stream entry. The Buddha praised Venerable Moggallana for being both persuasive and modest with his supporters, and spoke this verse about him. 49. Just as a bee, without hurting the flower, its color or scent, gathers its nectar and escapes, so should the seer roam in village. Looking to one's own deeds. When a lay disciple invited the Buddha for a meal, an ascetic supported by her abused both her and the Buddha, who advised her not to worry about what the ascetic is doing or saying, but instead to look to herself. The Buddha then summarized his teaching with this verse. 50. Not the wrong of others or what others have done or have not done one should consider, but what has been done and not done by oneself. Words are only meaningful when backed by deeds. When Venerable Ānanda is sent to teach the 2 queens of King Pasenadi, Mallika and Vasaphakatiya, the first profits by it, but the latter does not. The Buddha explained why this was so with these verses. 51. Just like a beautiful flower, which has color but lacks fragrance, so are well-spoken words fruitless for the one who acts not on them. 52. Just like a beautiful flower, which has both color and fragrance, so are well-spoken words fruitful for the one who will act on them. One should take the opportunity to do good deeds. Upāsikā was a faithful supporter of the Buddha, but was married off to a son of Migara, a supporter of the Jains. She insisted on inviting the Buddha for the wedding meal, and Migara was converted by his teaching. Later, she built the Buddharama monastery for the monastics. The Buddha spoke this verse about her. 53. Just as from a heap of flowers one might make a lot of garlands, so should many good deeds be done by one who is born a mortal. Virtue gains renown and is unsurpassed. When Venerable Ānanda asked the Buddha if there's any fragrance that goes against the wind, the Buddha explained that if someone takes refuge, keeps precepts, and is generous, the fragrance of his virtue will become widely known, and he spoke these verses. 54. The fragrance of flowers goes not against the wind, nor does sandalwood or pinwheel or white jasmine. But the fragrance of the good goes against the wind. The true person's fragrance permeates all directions. 55. Sandalwood and pinwheel, also water lily and striped jasmine. Amongst these kinds of good fragrance, virtue's fragrance is unsurpassed. The fragrance of virtue blows amongst the gods. Venerable Mahākassapa rose from meditation after 7 days and went for alms. Celestial spirits stepped forward to donate to him, but he dismissed them. Then Sakka and his wife disguised themselves as weavers and succeeded in giving alms, but Venerable Mahākassapa discovered who they were and chided them. The Buddha spoke this verse about him. 56. Pinwheel and sandalwood fragrance are insignificant, but the fragrance of one who has virtue flutters supreme amongst the gods. Mara can no longer find those who are free. Gravely ill, Venerable Gottika kept falling away from his concentration and decided to commit suicide. After the event, Mara searched high and low for his place of rebirth, but the Buddha asserted that he had not been reborn and spoke this verse. 57. Mara cannot find the path of those who are endowed with virtue, who lived heedfully, and who are freed through complete and deep knowledge. True disciples shine forth amongst the ordinary folk. Sirikutta supported the Buddha, but his friend Garahadina supported the Jainas. Sirikutta proved that the Jainas do not know the past, present, and future as they declared, and the Buddha proved his knowledge and power to Garahadina, who became his disciple. Then the Buddha spoke these verses. 58-59. Just as in a discarded heap along the highway, a lotus might arise with a pure fragrance, delighting the mind, so amongst the forsaken, the Samputta's disciple outshines the blind and the ordinary folk through his wisdom.